Robert Fludd's Answer to Master Foster, Section 1, Chapter 3, wherein the author is wrongfully accused by his discourteous homebred adversary of Magicke, and afterwards by his forren opposites, though of a contrary religion, is excused and cleared from that crime. It is no marvel, though mine adversary doth rashly and unjustly wound a man's reputation who differeth from him in profession or vocation, being that his satirical or cynic passion will not spare such learned men as are of his own calling or habit. For if you will be pleased to read and observe his dedicatory epistle, you shall find there that he, partly as it seemeth, being moved thereto by envy, as such as are in a better way of preferment than himself, and partly to insinuate and beget a better opinion and liking in his patron, inweigheth in these very words against some of his own coat. Nor am I, saith he, of their mind, which to become great by being accounted good preachers, preach not about twice or thrice a year, and then lay all their strength on their sermons. My resolution is otherwise. I will read much, write somewhat, and preach often. Lo, how he condemneth others, and praiseth himself. Yea, he doth not stick in his epistle to the reader to snarl against his superiors in the church, because they do not stop his mouth with a good benefice or church living, considering his great deserts. Yea, and seem to calumniate them, and lay simony unto their charges. His words are these: Shall any man for my boldness think to sit upon my skirts? Let those know I esteem myself infra invidiam. I cannot have less in the church, unless nothing, and if they shall endeavour to keep me still low, let them know I look for no good from them, that envy at my endeavours to do good. If I sit panting on the ground, I will not refuse to be fed with ravens to keep me alive with Elias. But I look not to be lifted up by any but by eagles, heroic spirits, men fearing God, and hating simoniacal covetousness. He scorneth to be raised by his superiors in the church, and expects only to be raised by eagles, heroic spirits, namely, by such as his noble patron is, in whom is no simoniacal covetousness, as who should say that in others there is simoniacal covetousness, and so on. What, therefore, can I expect from his outrageous pen, but slanders of witchcraft, magic, and such like abominations? What less can I appear in his sight than an anathema? One, I say, abandoned and accursed unto the devil. His scandalous texts are these: Dr. Fludd hath had the same censure passed on him, and hath been writ against for a magician. And I suppose this to be one cause why he hath printed his book beyond the seas. Our university and bishops are more cautelous, God be thanked, than to allow the printing of a magical book here. Surely Dr. Fludd's very defence of the weapon salve is enough to make it suspected, himself being accused for a magician by Marinus Mercerus, with a wonder that King James, of blessed memory, would suffer such a man to live and write in his kingdom. But if to be accused were to be guilty, who could be innocent? Master Doctor hath excused himself in his book, entitled Sopiae cum moria certamen, quius contrarium verum est, saith Lanovius, and so on. Here, gentle reader, you may see him pull off his hood of simplicity, or feigned veil of sanctity, which he professed in his epistles, and discover the malice and envy of his heart against me. In the first place, therefore, for the better satisfaction of my countrymen and friends, I will express the cause where I touched the superstitious Magicke, or magic, of the ancient ethnics. My scope was and hath been to write as well the natural discourse of the great world and little world, which we call man, as also to touch by way of an encyclopy, or epitome of all arts, as well lawful, which I did command as those which are esteemed unlawful, which I did utterly condemn as superstitious and of little or no probability at all. Among the rest, where I came to speak of the arts which belong unto the little world of man, I mention the science of genethliology, which treateth of the judgment of nativities, wherein I produce the great dispute which did arise between the two famous philosophers Porphyry and Iamblichus, whereof the first did hold that a man might come to the knowledge of his own genius or good angel by the art of astrology, namely by finding out the planet and nature of his spirit. That was lord of the 11th house, the which by the astrologians was for that cause called bonus daemon, or the good angel. But Iamblichus, his opinion was that a man had need of the assistance and knowledge of a higher spirit than was any of those which were governors of fatality, namely of such intelligences as were ascribed to the rule and direction of the 7 planets. Wherefore I did thereupon express the superstition of the ancients with the impossibility thereof, that thereby I might the better decry it and make it the more ridiculous to wise men. I, then suspecting the captious natures of some envious persons, did there make an apology, to excuse myself, and show the vanity of the thing, and how full of idle superstition it was, and to show it be only imaginary. But I seemed there to consent with Iamblichus, averring with him that without the revelation of that high and heavenly spirit which was granted unto the elect, none could come to the familiarity or knowledge of his good angel. I prove it out of many places of Scripture. Lo, this is all. Now judge, all ye that are impartial and truly learned, what an offence was here to decide according unto my power that great controversy of these 2 notable and eminent philosophers, which hath struck and been undecided even unto this day. Being that I in the conclusion ascribed the whole glory unto the sole and only Spirit, which is the Prince and Lord of angels and spirits, I professed to write generally of all, but as I went along I distinguished the good from the evil, that men might the better beware of, and refuse the one, and make choice of the other. Now therefore that I have expressed unto you the ground, which this our critic and his cynic master, the friar Mercenus, have slandered me with the title of a magician, I will proceed to the answer of every member of his frivolous objections. Dr. Fludd's defence of the weapon salve is enough to make it suspected. And why, I pray you? Marry, because he himself is accused for a magician by Marinus Mercenus. The conclusion is much like the capacity of the concluder. Dr. Fludd is suspected for a magician, ergo the purge of rhubarb, which he prescribeth, or rather any point in philosophy or physic, by him maintained in writings is magical. Non sequitur argumentum. So Roger Bacon is accused for a conjurer and a magician, ergo the perspective or optic science he writeth of is devilish and magical, or at least wise to be suspected. Ay, but this salve hath a magical property in it, for it healeth afar off, and not per contactum. So doth Bacon's optic make us to see the images of live men to walk in the air. It is said that by this art he has made an apparition of man to walk from the top of Allhallows steeple in Oxford to the top of St. Maurice. Surely these optical conclusions must be magical, and not by natural reflection of glasses, because these are utterly unknown to Master Foster and his adherents, and consequently are to be condemned as diabolical. But to come to the purpose, Master Foster, if his eyes had been so favourable and his will so charitable as to have looked on my answer to Mercenus in the defence of that point, before he had judged, he would without doubt, as well as hundreds of other men, whereof some are churchmen of no mean rank, and many doctors of physic of excellent learning have averred that Dr. Fludd has answered Mercenus so fully as well in that accusation as all other points laid by him unto his charge, that he could not be able in any way to reply against it. And it is well known here in England, to such as have been conversant beyond the seas, that the sufficiency of my answer hath so satisfied the learned, as well as in Germany as in France, that he hath been by them much condemned for his slanderous writing, and esteemed of but meanly for his small learning and indiscretion. Now the ground of his malice unto me was, for that he, having written of the harmony of the world, and finding that a book of that subject set out by me was very acceptable to his countrymen, he invented this slander against me and my harmony, that therefore he might bring his own into the better reputation. But what did I say? That he was accused and condemned for that his slander of some in France? Yea, verily, his dearest companion, who by reason of his insufficiency was easily persuaded to take his cause in hand, and to answer for him, I mean Peter Gassendus, his friend and champion, chideth his Mercenus for such his uncivil and scandalous reports against me in these very words. Ac zelus quidem quotu Mercene eventus es commendari cum debeat, at tamen te latere non potest quin ad modum durum sit vivendi in Christiano orbe appellari caco magnum, haereticum magnum, foetidae et horrendae magiae doctorem et propagatorum, audire non esse ferendum quies mode doctorem impune, provocato principe uti de illo poenas sumat, minisque etiam adhibitius, eondem propteria brevi submergendum fluctibus aeternis, etc. Ut nihil dicam de atheismo atque haeresi quanto quoque obihis fludo. Haec nempe sunt quae Russini at Davido Hieronomi irritare patientiam potuissent. Alter enim cum patientiam requirat in caeteris, qui vel tamen unius haereseos crimen ferat, aut dissimulet hunc clamitat non esse Christianum, alter vero nullo inquit nullo in suspicione haeresius, quemquam esse patientiam, quid fecissent in crimine seo suppositione aut atheisi aut caco magiae. These are the very words of Mercenus, his chief friend, which I interpret thus, And although, my Mercenus, the zeal wherewith you are moved against Fludd is to be commended, nevertheless you cannot be ignorant how grievous and intolerable a thing it is unto any man that liveth in the Christian world to be called a witch, or evil magician, a heretic magician, or a teacher or divulger of foul and horrible magic, and that such a teacher is not to be suffered unpunished, also to provoke the king or prince to punish him, and besides all this to threaten him, saying that for the cause he should be drowned or drenched in the eternal lake, and so forth. Besides the athasme and heresy, which also you object and lay to Fludd's charge. Verily, these are things which would stir up the patience of Rufinus, or Saint Jerome, whereof the one, when he requireth patience in other things, yet he concludeth that he which can hear or dissemble with the offence of one hearsay, he crieth that such a man is no Christian. The other saith, I will not any man should be patient in the suspicion of heresy, much less to be accused or suspected of athanaisme, or naughty magic. In which words our English world may discern first how this my honest dealing and moral foreign adversary doth check his uncivil friend, whose part he undergoeth for his immodesty and small discretion, and next doth teach my homebred adversary a great deal of manners of behaviour in writing against an adversary, namely, not to contend with foul and scandalous language, but with acute arguments, and those to the purpose, armed with the truest reasons of philosophy. Doth not Master Foster blush now to see his mighty and magnanimous author Marinus Mercenus checked by his judicious friend, whom he himself hath elected, as well as for umpire as stickler is his cause? Yea, and a chief champion to defend it, for calling me unjustly a magician and other misbeseeming names. Yea, is he not ashamed, if he hath any to choose out of a lying and false author, for the propagating of his brother's slander? If this be not so, ask Gassendus. But he will no doubt reply that this speech of Gassendus to Mercenus doth not take away for all that the suspicion of magic from Dr. Fludd, though he reproveth his friend for using him with so much terms, to which for his better satisfaction I produce this other place out of Gassendus his reply against me, in his friend Mercenus his behalf. This is the title of his chapter, being the 20th. Ad libri tertii caput primum. Depulsa Fluddo ateisi haeresios et praesertim cacomagiae suspicio. That is to the first chapter of the third book, wherein Fludd is cleared from the suspicion of athasme, heresy, and especially of devilish magic. He speaketh thus by way of counsel to Mercenus. Restat suspicio cacomagiae, de quo praesertim quaestio haec est, verunt amen non uti ipsum diabolicis illis artibus, argumentum mihi est, quod diabolos esse non credit, aut non videator credere, quales nos vulgo intelligimus a cacomagis usurpari. That is, there resteth now the suspicion of evil magic, of which especially the question is made, but this is an evident argument unto me, that he is no such magician, because he doth not believe, or at least wise maketh semblance not to believe, that there are such devils as we imagine to be familiar with witches. Let Master Foster therefore see upon what fickle foundation he hath laid the false and malignant slander of an evil magician on me. But alas, I smell a rat, for I will use his own witty phrase. He careth not how he may disgrace any one, for that he might thereby the better serve his own turn. Before I have produced in my mystical anatomy a natural reason for the weapon salve, which he neither can, nor for all his poor reasons expressed in his book shall be able to repel. Therefore, forsooth, I must be numbered amongst the magicians, and wherefore? Marry, because Mercenus hath given the same censure on me. And who is Mercenus? A railing, satirical babbler, not able to make a reply in his own defence, and therefore being put to a non-plus, he went, like a second Job, in his greatest vexation to ask counsel of the learned doctors in Paris. And at last, for all that, he, fearing his cause and finding himself insufficient, procured by much entreaty his friend Peter Gassendus to help him, and called another of his friends unto his assistance, namely one Dr. Lanovius, a seminary priest, as immoral as himself, and one that professeth in his judiciary letter much, but performeth little. And in good faith I may boldly say that for 3 roaring, bragging, and fresh-water pseudo-philosophers I cannot parallel any in Europe that are so like of a condition as are Mercenus, Lanovius, and Foster. All 3 exceeding terrible in their bombasting words, imagining to quell and make subject unto their thundering braves the stoutest scholars of Europe, if they cared for them, and did esteem them more than bugbearers, scaraway crows, or frightened little children. As for Peter Gassendus, I find him a good philosopher, and an honest and well-conditioned gentleman, just as well unto his adversary as friend, not passing beyond the bounds of a Christian modesty, but striking home with his philosophical arguments, when he seeth his occasion. Mercenus his words in his epistle to his patron, wherein he seeketh aid of this his friend Peter Gassendus, are these, translated into English as near as I can. After I had communicated with the counsel of all my learned friends, they being heard, I would also ask counsel of my friend Gassendus, who departed into Germany a while since. I did pray and beseech him that he would seriously write back unto me what he thought of Fludd's works, for I did conjecture that he, by reason of the curiosity which he had to attain unto every kind of philosophy, would for a certain penetrate also into this philosophy, under which Fludd doth hide his impieties, and so on. Thus you see that this good friar confesseth that he understood not Fludd's philosophy, and therefore was fain to pray Gassendus to assist him, which, when Gassendus to his power had performed with unspeakable joy, he uttered these words: Behold, when Fludd in answering me would hide himself under senses of Scripture, as lurking holes, my Gassendus hath so brought him out of them, and so discovered his cabal, that I think myself satisfied with this discovery only. See here, Master Foster, the cravenly and cowardly friar, whom you take for your author and master, and well you may, for like master, like scholar. Judge you therefore, worthy reader, whether this man's slanderous reports be not propped up with a found piece of flesh. A worthy philosopher to challenge the field, and request other men to fight for him. As for Lanovius, He acknowledgeth that Mercenus hath earnestly fought his assistance also in these words. Out of Lovnovius, his epistle to Mercenus. I cannot but approve your counsel in taking the judgment of other men, which is, that you should not rashly precipitate yourself in your own cause. You have also esteemed me to be fitly numbered amongst those which you have made choice of for this business. And verily your case is to be lamented, the which for your dignity's cause I cannot suffer. I will not suffer my suffrage to be wanting unto you. These, therefore, are two champions that are come into the philosopher's camp or field with their friend Mercenus to tug and wrestle with me. I have, I thank my God, fully answered them already, and mine answer is at the print, and I would that Master Foster had a better pate and capacity than he hath to make a fourth in reply. The more the merry, for as truth conquereth all things, it shall be with more, I fear, no colours. But to proceed with our text. Marinus Mercenus, saith Master Foster, doth wonder that King James of blessed memory would suffer such a man to live and write in his kingdom. To this I answer that King James of everlasting memory, for his justice, piety, and great learning, was by some envious persons moved against me, touching the same subject. But when I came unto him, and he in his great wisdom had examined the truth and circumstance of every point, touching this scandalous report, which irregularly and untruly was related of me, he found me so clear in my answer, and I so regally learned and gracious in himself, and so excellent and subtle in his inquisitive objections, as well touching other points as this, that instead of a check, I thank my God, I had much grace and honour from him, and received from that time forward many gracious favours of him, and I found him my just and kingly patron all the days of his life. And must I now, after so regal a judge, have such an upstart inquisitor as is Master Foster, to judge and censure me again, and that by the ridiculous authority of an ignorant friar, whose friend doth justly condemn him, and check him for his slanders, and clear me from all such crimes as he objecteth against me? Then he makes a very shrewd objection, saying, because Mercenus writ against Dr. Fludd for a magician, therefore I suppose that this is the cause why he hath printed his books beyond the seas, our university and reverend bishops, as before. Though I need not answer in this point a man of so envious a condition, yet for charity's sake, which bids me not offend my brother, I will at this time satisfy him. I sent them beyond the seas because our home-born printers demanded of me £500 to print the first volume, and to find the cuts in copper. But beyond the seas it was printed at no cost of mine that I would wish, and I had 16 copies sent me over with £40 in gold, as an unexpected gratuity for it. How now, Master Foster, have I not made you a lawful answer? As for the university, I wonder my works should seem so malagracious unto it, that when they are registered in 2 of her libraries, and surely if my conscience had persuaded me, and that there had been anything in them which had been so heinous or displeasant, either to the king's majesty or the reverend bishops, I would not have presumed to have made first our late King James of blessed memory, and next 3 of the reverend bishops of the land the patrons of them, being that I, electing them my patrons, must present them with my first fruits, and therefore must know that if anything had happened amiss in them, it could not be hidden from them, whom in verity I would be afraid to displease, as being such as with my own heart I reference. His friend Jocinus Frisius, or rather his own self, as saith Lalovius, in a book called Summum Bonum, excuseth Roger Bacon, Tritemius, Cornelius Agrippa, Marsilius Ficius, and Fratres Rosae Crucis, from being Cacco-magicians. I wonder at nothing more than what Beelzebub was not in that number. What a singular diabolical conceit! For the first, whether that book be mine or no, I have satisfied Gassendus, whose only ape Leonius is, for he objecteth nothing but what he taketh out of Gassendus his book, to make Master Foster's worship an account I am not minded at this time. Only thus much I will say for Joachimus Frisius, that what he hath produced out of their own works, in their own defence excuseth them, and accuseth such calumniators as Master Foster is, who are so apt to condemn a person for that they are altogether ignorant in. Let the readers observe the proofs in Frisius, his book, to clear them, and then if any will afterwards accuse them, I shall deem them partial. But we must note by the ways that our sponge-bearer must make election of Jesuits, as in his epistle he confesseth, and friars and seminary priests to be his instructors and teachers, to reply both against the weapon salve and me, when he knoweth that there are such as can afford neither him nor me, as being esteemed among them for heretics, one good word. Nay, I will tell him for his greater shame, that their only spite unto me is, because they discern my works to be well esteemed abroad in the world, myself being, as exorbitant unto their church, esteemed by them an heretic. All that the greatest adversary I have, even Marinus Marcenus himself, aimeth at, is to have me change my religion and to gain me to their side, and for that intent he promiseth me, if I will leave my heresy, as he termeth it, many rewards and courtesies. But I find here at home, even amongst our own religion, some men less friendly and greater enemies unto me and mine honest endeavours than abroad. Marcenus, his words are these, after he had thought with greater terms to terrify me. Marinus Marcenus, out of the 1744 column of his commentary upon Genesis. But if you, Robert Fludd, will leave your heresy, I, with my friend, will heartily embrace you, and will either face to face speak with you, or by letters confer with you about certain sciences, and I will desire him not to write against you, but that you may be received by the grace of the divine power amongst the children of the Catholic Church, that you, together with us, may eternally celebrate the divine praises in the place of bliss. If not, thou wilt be tormented with eternal flames, as it is certain that heretics shall, and those that go from the Catholic religion, which your ancestors did embrace, especially such as persist obstinately in their heresy, will certainly be damned. For God's word is true and infallible, wherefore examine seriously your conscience. And in another place he wisheth that, leaving my heresy, I would join with them in the correcting of arts, telling me what an applause I should have for so doing of every commonwealth. This I speak to some of my countrymen's shame, who, instead of encouraging me in my labours, as by letters from many out of Polonia, Swabia, Prussia, Germania, Transylvania, France, and Italy I have been. Do prosecute me with malice and ill speeches, which some learned Germans hearing of remember me in their letters of this our Saviour Christ, his speech. Nemo est propheta in sua patria. No man is a prophet in his own country. It was for naught the wise man said, Qui scientiam adit, adidit dolorem, et quod in multa scientia multa sit indignatio. He that addeth unto himself science contracteth unto himself much pain and vexation, because that in much science is much indignation. As for my part, without any bragging of my knowledge, be it spoken, I speak this feelingly, but the sincerity of my guiltless conscience bids me have patience. And now to the last member of the text. I wonder at nothing more, saith he, than that Beelzebub was not in the number. Marry, will I tell him why, if it had been true that the use of the weapon salve is witchcraft, that the users thereof witches and conjurers, as he boldly saith, how, I pray you, should Beelzebub be missing from our company? But, being that it appeareth false before God and man, it should seemeth he was busy in the animating of his ministers, namely of those calumniators and slanderers, which abuse and scandalize publicly not only God's good creatures, but their brethren also. He is busy, I say, to instruct and incite such worldly children, true imps of darkness, to judge false judgments, and to accuse the innocent. And this is the reason that Master Foster and his like have missed to find Beelzebub, or the devil, in this number, forasmuch as he is nearer them than they are aware of.